Hey folks, this clip is brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ. That is Farm Bureau Health Plans. All right. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, Big Orange Podcast, the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Back for a midweek segment because there has been some news that's happened. Some good, some potentially for Tennessee. And then I guess if you want to throw baseball in there, we weren't really planning on talking about that, but baseball lost to Tennessee Tech last night. Didn't just lose, got their butt kicked by Tennessee Tech last night. But that's kind of a different conversation altogether. So in this midweek segment, we're gonna make this two segments that we're gonna release on Wednesday and Thursday. First, we're gonna talk about Santiago Vescovi announcing that he is returning to Tennessee, and we're going to talk about just the general basketball situation there, what that means for Tennessee with him coming back officially. And then we're going to cover the NCAA hearing with old Jeremy Pruitt. Tennessee walked up in there today like a set of gangsters, brought the commissioner of the SEC with them. And we're going to talk about that in the second segment that we'll be releasing on Thursday. So subscribe to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. Make sure you don't miss that Thursday video if you're watching the Wednesday video and vice versa. But let's get right to it, Zach. Santiago Vescovi last night during that butt whooping by Tennessee Tech on the baseball team, right in the middle of it, Santiago Vescovi goes on Instagram and he announces that the rumors are true. He's coming back to Tennessee. So pretty much Tennessee's best overall player, most consistent guy, the guy that you needed the most to come back is coming back, and that's nice. But what were your initial thoughts when you saw this last night, Zach?
We kind of expected this to happen. It seemed like everything was pointing that direction, but you never know until it actually happens. We've seen plenty of, things not go as expected. I mean, obviously it's huge for Tennessee. Like you said, he's a leader. He's a guy that's been with this team. He knows what Rick Barnes wants. He can kind of almost be like another coach out there, and he's the one guy that you can kind of count on to hit these big threes in these close games when you need him. And he also has like an outside chance or a pretty good chance to become the all-time three-point leader at Tennessee if he can break Allen Houston's record if everything goes okay this upcoming season, if he stays healthy and all that, which he has had some issues here and there. But you lose Vescovi, and there's just such a massive hole on this team next season. So it was critical that he returned. I think it's the best decision for him. He doesn't seem like an NBA guy. Maybe he gets a chance as a late round pick, undrafted guy. I don't know how his game really translates to the NBA. I don't think that it will. He seems more like an overseas player. Personally, that's what I see. So I think it's the right decision to come back. I don't think he had a lot to gain from moving on, and the NIL money might even be better at Tennessee than it is taking, a late round draft choice or going overseas.
Yeah, for sure. I've also noticed just looking at his Instagram last night, he's got himself a girlfriend locally. I don't know if that makes a difference, but it definitely can. I mean, I've made decisions in my life based on my spouse. So, that could be a factor too. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you can't understate how huge that is for Tennessee, period. This dude in certain games this season absolutely carried you. He was one of the only guys who could consistently, when offense was needed, make something happen. And of course, there were times too when even he couldn't get it going, and those were just nightmare games for Tennessee. We all watched them. But it really is just the biggest thing that could happen for Tennessee. Of course, you still have Josiah Jordan-James out there making a decision. Reports are that he's leaning towards going. Plus Euros, I haven't heard anything potentially about him returning. I think with Euros, there's probably a factor of I'm not sure they want him to return. I love Euros. Genuinely, he definitely made some boneheaded mistakes, but I love that energy that he always brought, and the fact that he was just kind of an enforcer out there. I loved that role. But I think that they may need to go ahead and move on. You got Awaka already in the wings, and he's going to fill that role. And Awaka is definitely, his ceiling is far higher than Euros. So that's fine.
But do you think with Euros, I think Rick Barnes probably isn't changing his style of play. I mean, he is who he is at this point. He's a Hall of Fame coach. Yeah, he needs to evolve and adapt if he wants to make a Final Four. But hard to see him making any crazy changes as far as his whole approach. He plays the same type of basketball. Do you feel like you need Euros there just to kind of set the tone, even if he's not playing a ton of minutes, or does that just make it too hard to find any sort of rhythm for your offense trying to fit him in when maybe he doesn't really need to be in there?
That is a good question because you look at like the Duke game. Euros went out there and quite
Set the
literally
tone.
punched him in the mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he really did. And so there is value there in that. You really, when you want to be a physical, defense heavy basketball team, you want a guy who's going to go out there and be purposely physical. So, sure. I mean,
Is he too much of a waste on the other end of the floor, though? I mean, are you giving up too much
that's
offensively?
exactly. And it's kind of how I lean with Josiah Jordan-James, too. Defense, super elite. The kid's a great leader out there and just a great ambassador for the University of Tennessee. But offensively, I mean, he was just so up and down, and there were games where he just shot you out of it, where he just, he was taking all of these threes, and you just go, just stop. You're missing everything. Nothing's going down. Stop wasting possessions for us. And so it's, I lean more towards I wouldn't mind Josiah coming back if for nothing else other than him just continuing to be an ambassador for the university. I would love it. But yeah, on the actual basketball court and to play Josiah, it's like borderline. And Euros to me, personally, like in my analysis, I think Tennessee would be okay with him moving on. And you go with Awaka and Adu down low, and just kind of go from there. And you have guys coming up in this coming season who they're not going to be 7-footers like Eurosh, but you do have some taller options. So I, well, now that I'm looking, you really, if you lose, let's see. I don't know who's in this recruiting class, but yeah, you're losing Kamwa. I'm just looking at the roster right now. Yeah, so some of the guys on the bench aren't as tall as I thought. Yeah, so really, I say that, but actually, Adu and Awaka really with a Kama moving on, they're really your primary post players. I wouldn't mind seeing this isn't going to happen, as you already said. Rick is set in his ways, and he's not changing anything despite the results. But I would love to see them just concentrate on being small ball guard heavy. It's what's working in college basketball right now. It's like hypo with the fast paced offense. It's what's working in college football right now. And they hypo leans into it. And Barnes now at this point is playing antiquated basketball that gets you. We've all seen it, gets you to the tournament and maybe the Sweet 16 and maybe some things like that. But it's only going to take you so far in certain ways. So that's a different discussion from what we're kind of having here. But
Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years, and much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans.
To roll it back to Vescovi, there. I mean, your backcourt this coming season, if Zakai Zeigler can get back, it really is just going to kind of be. We'll see if he can make it back in time. But it'll be Vescovi and Zeigler. You got to assume those are your starters up top, and then behind them, BJ Edwards. But you've also kind of in the message board rumor mill. Maybe he's looking at transferring. Nothing that hasn't been officially reported anywhere. Let me say that's just been talked about. And I would say to me, that kind of makes sense. Plenty of opportunity for him to play this season, and they never put him in. So what does that mean? But Freddie DeLeone coming up. They also just picked up, we got to talk about this. They picked up not Justin Gainey. Justin Gainey's already there. He's an assistant coach for Tennessee. Justin Gainey's kid, Jordan Gainey from South Carolina Upstate, is coming in, and maybe his style of play is not necessarily a point guard replacement, but it is another guard that they're bringing in. So you wonder if one goes out, is Jordan Gainey kind of a spot filler there? I don't know. But what'd you think of that pickup of Justin Gainey's kid coming in?
I thought it was really hard to figure out what Tennessee's going for there. And he's obviously been productive where he's been, but it's not SEC competition. It's not Power Five competition. You have the connection to his dad. Is this like a preferred walk-on situation where they're just kind of throwing him a bone, letting him transfer to Tennessee? Is he going to be a rotational guy off the bench where you really give your lineup some depth? They think he can be that kind of guy that, okay, you can, you talked about Tennessee's depth last season. Obviously, that's something that's important to Rick Barnes. Is that the whole goal here? Or is he a replacement for somebody that might leave and you expect him to play some serious minutes? I think that would be expecting a bit much based on his past where he's been. And he's averaged, 15 points a game. But again, not against SEC competition or Power 5 competition. So it's really hard to know what Tennessee's going for there. I think it's an interesting pickup. If it's just for depth, I like it a lot. If it's just because it's the coach's son or because you think he's going to be a main part of the starting player or something like that, I'm not sure it's great for Tennessee, either of those options. But if he's a depth piece, I think it's a good addition.
I agree. That is pretty much what it seems like. He is most likely not going to come in and be any kind of star for you, but he adds the depth that you probably need with the potential losses coming here, because I guess we haven't even mentioned this. Julian Phillips probably leaving to the NBA or to somewhere else. I was looking at some message boards yesterday, and the again, the message board rumors here, no official reporting on this at all that I've seen, is that Bruce is really at Auburn is really trying to get Julian Phillips, which, everybody knows Bruce would let him play, would let Julian fly, where Rick would not. So that would make me absolutely sick to my stomach if that happened. I hope he just goes to the NBA and doesn't do that if he's going to leave, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But you're going to need some depth pieces there if he leaves, if Josiah Jordan James leaves, because at the moment, you don't have a ton of spots, and you have the Harvard transfer potentially. The news around that situation, Chris Ludlam. 19 points a game, 8.5 rebounds a game, 1.6 assists a game. And 48% for the field shooting. You want that kid. You want him bad, and Tennessee needs him bad. And you got a scholarship spot for him. And the news around that is that it's leaning towards Tennessee. That would be a very, very good pickup. Hopefully that happens. But outside of that, it's going to be an interesting year for Barnes coming up. I think this is the first very legitimate test of this new sort of, I guess, if you want to call it, the era of him. To Tennessee fans, him being Mark Richt. We already talked about this. We made an entire video about how at this point he's a Mark Richt of college basketball, and it's really set in stone now. You had a golden opportunity to make the Final Four this year. You blew it against Florida Atlantic, and so this really is kind of a new era of where I think Barnes, if things go south, would be facing the hot seat. And so that makes a difference. It really makes a difference. He's got a fat paycheck and the results haven't been there. And so this season, with the losses that you're going to have, it'll be, I don't want to say dicey. Dicey's not the right word. I think it's a tournament team. It's a tournament team for sure. Even if you don't get this kid from Harvard, but with the kid from Harvard, I think it's definitely a tournament team. And so it's going to, interesting is the right word. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens.
Yeah, if things go south, I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot about that UCLA stuff that went down a couple of years ago, and a lot more about that big contract that you kind of alluded to there with Rick Barnes. And I think that really, there's been more support for Barnes than I expected. Not that I thought people would be against Barnes, because again, he's a great coach, and I don't think anybody reasonable wants him fired, but I was surprised there hasn't been more criticism from the fan base. Kind of the Facebook crowd seems really, really behind Barnes, just because of the huge contract that he has. I feel like those expectations, I know that the defensive Barnes seems to lie in, well, do you remember where Tennessee basketball was before? Do you remember, he's the best coach in program history? I get all of that. But at the same time, when you earn that paycheck, the expectations change from, okay, this is what Tennessee's typically done, to, okay, this is what a coach making this amount of money is expected to do. So I'm kind of surprised more of that hasn't popped up. Maybe it could this upcoming season.
I think a lot of that comes back to kind of what we were talking about with baseball on the main show on Monday. I kind of mentioned like if baseball goes south, fans aren't going to just hang on with a bad product. Tennessee is a football school, and football is good right now. They have a distraction now. And so if baseball goes south, there's going to be the baseball diehards. That's for sure. But a huge chunk of this fan base, they're just Tennessee football fans. And that's no criticism. That just is a fact of the way the Tennessee fan base is. There is an entire set of folks that look at basketball and they go, that's fine. I'm okay with just the NCAA tournament. And then there's fans like myself where I'm like, I want a Final Four. Damn it, let's get it going. I'm probably too intense about it on the other end. But there is just the way I always put it is there are Tennessee basketball fans, and then there are basketball fans. I am a basketball fan and also a Tennessee basketball fan. And then there are just Tennessee basketball fans. And those people are, they mostly care about football. And so when things go south with basketball, they're kind of like, yeah, well, at least football's good. That is going to be like, make no mistake. That is what, if baseball goes wrong, if basketball goes wrong, they're going to go, well, football. Yeah. And then those tickets aren't going to sell. And the facilities that need to get upgraded, especially with baseball, they're not going to lose funding or anything, but your investment might not get the ROI you wanted, So, again, that's more conversation than we really need to have here, because none of that's come to fruition yet, and I don't want to speak it into existence, but it's a little bit of a tightrope for Barnes going forward. So we'll see what happens, but I think that's pretty much it as far as I'm concerned. So glad Santi's coming back. But anything else with basketball before we move on to the NCAA hearing?
No, I mean, it literally took us talking about how nothing has happened with basketball for a few things to start happening this week. So at least we're
finally
continuing to live up to that reputation that we've earned lately.
Yes, if we talk about it, it will happen within minutes of our show. All right. So that's it for this segment with basketball. Thanks for tuning in. Now on this, so we're putting this out on Wednesday. Again, on Thursday, we're going to put one out about this NCAA hearing that's happening right now. We're going to give our take on all of that's happening. So look out for that on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. Rate, review, subscribe, rate. Is there a rating on YouTube? I don't think so. Thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, all of that stuff. And then we'll talk to y'all on Thursday.
See you then.